Well, look, thank you everyone for coming. It's a really special privilege and honor for me actually to talk to Garry. In my opinion, my humble opinion, the greatest chess player of all time. And I've really enjoyed his book, which I reviewed recently, and I was impressed with Garry's understanding of artificial intelligence and the latest advances in that. So, it's going to be great to talk about that as well as chess today.
Yes.
So welcome.
Thank you very much
DeepMind.
for your review that offered me ultimate protection against all the tech guys that try to criticize me for not being an expert.
Well, I'm glad if that can be of use. So before we get talking about Deep Blue Match, and I'm sure everyone's going to want to hear about your insights on that, and also machine learning more generally. And I wanted to begin by asking you, about growing up as a chess champion in Soviet Union. Did you always want to be a chess player, a world champion at chess? Did you consider anything else, or were you from a very young age decided this was your path?
I learned how to play chess when I was 5 or 6. I'm sorry I couldn't give you an exact moment. Nobody was there to tweet about it. It was late '68, maybe early '69. Yeah, watching my parents trying to solve chess problem, and I loved the game at first sight. Ever since, I'm still in awe with the game, and I could feel that was a match made in heaven, and everybody around also could see that chess was a perfect fit for my mind.
Skills, yeah. And actually, you talk about in the book about chess informing all of your thinking and the rest of your life, right? What do you mean by that? What skills can you see yourself using in the rest of your life that you learn from chess?
Naturally, if you are engaged in a competitive sport at such an early age, you see many things just as a reflection of your chess games, your engagement, because you have to play, you have to win.
Yeah.
That means you have to change certain habits and certain customs. What was important for me, that's what I learned from my mother, is that my game was not just about winning. It was also about making a difference. And that's what helped me to make a transition later on in my life from playing chess, being #1 chess player for 20 years, to other things that I'm doing now, not pretending that I could be #1 and repeat my outstanding achievements in the game of chess, but still recognizing that I'm quite useful because I'm trying to bring my chess experience, what I learned from the game of chess, my analytical skills, to make the difference elsewhere.
So maybe we should talk about obviously the heart of your book, which is the Deep Blue Match. And I was fascinated to see your take on having gone through the AlphaGo matches ourselves from the other side, your take on it from the player's perspective.
It's an interesting story because when we played our first match, and I always want to remind people that we played 2 matches, and I won the first one.
Yes, exactly. We should make that very clear.
So
I was going to say exactly.
Now, the first match in Philadelphia, it was organized as quite a low-level event. The corporation was not even involved. It was ACM behind it, and the team always wanted to challenge me. And I had an experience of playing against them in 1989 when they had a Deep Thought, the prototype from Carnegie Mellon that they brought to IBM, and it's turned into a Deep Blue project. Everything has changed after game 1, which, by the way, if we are talking about a watershed moment, that was in February 1996 in Philadelphia when I lost game 1 of that match. Because the rest is, you may argue, a matter of technique, matter of time. It was like signing on the wall. If the machine could be the world champion in 1 game, then eventually, yeah. I fought back, I won the match, I won game 2 and game 5 and game 6, but it was pretty clear that the rest would be a matter of time. And the first game had some kind of a record following on the internet. I think it's the numbers they had, they were even higher than numbers later on in Atlanta that what IBM run the website there. And suddenly the corporation, Lou Gerstner and his team discovered the huge potential at a relatively low cost. So, while the rest of the match was still, played, it was purely chess, then it turned into a big corporate endeavor. And look, it's water under the bridge. 20 years ago, I lost the match, but I think, and I described in the book, I made many mistakes in preparation. And one of the biggest mistakes, and that's quite, that's why I was so upset with myself, is that I didn't treat the IBM Deep Blue as just, a pawn in the way I treated Anatoly Karpov or Vishy Anand or Nigel Short. For me, it was still, I was still part of a great social and scientific experiment of the end of the 20th century. Something that could help us to understand more about how we humans make decisions, how machines can play with us. It was not just, winning or losing. Big mistake.
Yeah.
Now, for IBM, it was just about winning or losing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the big mistakes that I made, it's just while signing the contract, you always have to read the fine print.
Yeah. I'm going to say the rematch clauses.
And because it's when people ask me whether IBM cheated, no, they just bend the rules in their favor. They follow the letter, but not the spirit of the agreement. And for instance, one of the big issues after our first match in Philadelphia for me was, how can I prepare if I didn't have any games? This is the normal way to prepare. You look at the games of your opponent. And Deep Blue in Philadelphia was a black box. I had no idea what it was capable of. Though I saw few games that machine played against other computers, but it was not the machine that faced me. Now, 1 year, more than 1 year, 15 months between the first match and the second match, and I was under the impression that I will be treated fairly, because after my first victory in Philadelphia, I went to Yorktown Heights. I sat with their team. They had this similar arrangements for all IBM labs around the world. So the atmosphere was very friendly.
Yeah.
And
then it changed.
And then I expected the games to be provided, and then they said, wait a second, but did you read? The games played in official tournaments, and of course, Deep Blue hasn't played a single game outside the lab.
Right.
So, which means that in May 1997, I faced another black box that I knew was much stronger than it was before, but still no idea what to expect. I knew they had a professional team, so they made a massive preparation, and I have to also admit my preparation was quite lousy, because again, it only just before the match, a week before the match, I realized that's how difficult the challenge could be. But also one of the key elements of this contract that I totally overlooked was about machines rebooting. That's a big issue.
Yeah.
You understand what it is? It's here, I don't have to explain, but the general audience doesn't understand that the moment you reboot the computer, you will never be able to reconstruct the game. So which means that there's a whole idea that it's the match is fair and square, and you can always go back and to see why the blue made this move or that move. It's over. And also, the mechanism...
Maybe people don't realize that, actually. I didn't realize it until I read the book, that in fact several times the Deep Blue crashed, and then they rebooted it.
We don't know the crash.
And then they came up with a different move, right, in a couple of situations.
No. It doesn't matter what the move was. It's just the crash. If you played a match, anything but the problems was agreed, crash, you lost the game. Heart attack. Sorry, go to see the doctor. Yes.
Should have just been a loss.
They had Ken Thompson, it's a great computer expert, just who was there in Philadelphia helping me. He was also in front of the screen. But on the screen you could see the Deep Blue's communication back to the programmer. But you didn't see whether they said anything
the other way.
The other way. Again, I don't know, but it's definitely created a lot of tension in the match, and after losing game 2, it's another story of its own. So I was very upset, and I demanded logs. And by the way, if they wanted to play a fair game, all they had to do is to produce the logs and to prove that my suspicions were not well founded. They didn't do it. They just wanted me just to be inflamed, because they realized that while Deep Blue was not that strong at that time, I still think I was stronger.
Yeah, you were definitely
objectively.
stronger.
Now,
I would say too.
20 years later, you can look at the games. You can take a chess engine on your laptop, and you'll find out that many mistakes were made from both sides. I mean, one of the most amazing. It was not even game 2, but game 5. The end game, we reached an end game. I was slightly better, and everybody at that time in 1997 believed that was a brilliant escape by Deep Blue. Now, in 30 seconds to 1 minute, depends on the strength of your of the speed of your computer. Chess engines like Stockfish or Commodore will tell you that the end game was a draw. Deep Blue made a bad mistake, and then I missed a win, which nobody saw in 1997. It's including the blue. So that tells you that's the relative strength. And I think that's if we played the third match, the rubber match, I still had a good chance of winning. Again, it wouldn't change the sort of long-term outcome, but
how long do you think you could have held them off for if you had your full potential?
Maybe 2-3 years.
Yeah, that's what I would
The blue maximum 2-3 years. I played 2 more matches with Deep Fritz and Deep Junior in 2003. Both ended in a draw. So that was a balance in the next 5 years. But in 1997, they realized that if putting pressure on only one human player in the match, they could achieve the result. If you cannot make your player stronger, you can definitely, inflame the other player and took him off the balance.
So sort of moving more to the present day now, how do you think, how have chess computers changed chess? Do you think it's for the better? It's just different? What do you think about that evolution?
It's this something that you said that, it's quite striking, because you said, is it for better or worse? It's happening, period. It's just the technology is neither good nor bad. It's agnostic. You can do many great things with your mobile phone, but you can also create a terrorist network. So it's happening, and we just have to adjust. And as for the game of chess, it's different because young generation of chess players, they learn very differently from us. I remember I had books. And not so many books new books you can buy in the Soviet Union. Every book was cherished, and I had my notebooks. So when I went to the top and played World Championship matches, I had also notebooks and just all recorded my analysis, and I treasured them. I remember just, I had a couple of quite thick notebooks with analysis, and they were, just top secret. And I believed in 1985, in 1986, 1987, that was real treasure. That was a powerful weapon. It's like, the magic sword of Merlin. Now, when you look at this analysis with computer, you understand it was a broken knife. But also, when you look at young chess players, and under the umbrella of Kasparov Chess Foundation, I have been involved in working with them. And I'm talking about kids of international masters, grandmaster level. It's such a different in the way they approach the game, the way they look at the pieces. It happened time and again. We reaching certain position, analyzing the game, and they say, bad move. I made a mistake here. I said, fine. Why? Oh, and then it's a long line, so the machine said, I understand, I could see the screen, but why you think this move is wrong? And they don't understand the question, because machine said so, because it's on the screen. So it's somehow the mind's being hijacked by the power of the machine. And one of the reasons Magnus Carlsen was so successful and still a dominant force in the world of chess. And I remember after working with him in 2009, 2010 for more than a year, he never looked at the machine as an ultimate source of wisdom. For him, it was more like a calculator to verify his own understanding and evaluation of the position. This is a big challenge, but I believe it's not only in chess, it's elsewhere. Many people are just staring at the computers, eyes are just being caught by the screen, expecting just to find a solution there,
instead of thinking for themselves.
Exactly. So that's why I always bring, as a piece of wisdom, the classical phrase from Pablo Picasso that computers are useless because they can only give you answers. So, but everything begins with a question.
I mean, it's interesting you talk about Magnus Carlsen. You say that, interestingly, although he's grown up in the computer chess era, he's one of the most human, I think you called it, or intuitive players around, right? So it's kind of interesting.
He's consistent. Yes, it's human because at the end of the day, 20 years after my match with Deep Blue, more people playing chess than ever before. And the chess is still very popular because at the end of the day, it's a fight between two individuals. And what has changed is it's not just the game itself, but the way people are watching it. 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, 40 years ago, the World Championship match was kind of, it's an event of absolute quality. Even Karpov and Kasparov played the game, and one made a terrible blunder. It could take time in the press center for grandmasters to find out. To whisper it, mistake, and it's like it's something that you should worship. Today, when I'm watching the games by Magnus Carlsen Caruana, and you have thousands of amateurs from all over the world watching it, you can see screaming, mistake, mistake, because machine shows immediately, this is evaluation drop. So it's some kind of respect has disappeared.
Yes, from that. It's a real shame.
But also it added interest, because people can follow. They just, they have access to their computer, and they don't have to be strong players to understand what is happening. And
one other interesting thing you said actually about the chess computers, and I wonder if it's going to happen with Go as well, in the countries that are not traditionally good at chess or Go, because they have access to these machines, maybe kids in those countries can now get very strong, right? Like Magnus in Norway, or I don't know whether that's,
I'm not sure Magnus, meteoric rise was due to computers, and maybe it's because in this environment you don't have to spend so much time learning from other players, so the process of maturing for the chess player is much shorter. You have grandmasters at 14, 15 today, they know much more than Bobby Fischer knew 40 years ago, just because they played many games, they could travel around, they could watch the games. So chess is a perfect match for internet, because you can follow the games, you can learn, you can analyze. So there are many things you can do that dramatically increase the pace of learning and getting to the top.
So you invented, I think, the concept of advanced chess, right? Man and computer, human and computer.
Sure.
Yes, human and computer versus computer. Are you still stronger? Have you tried that recently with the latest chess engines? Is that still true now?
Yes, while licking my wounds after the blue match, so I thought, how about bringing it together? Just out of curiosity, because I thought, wait a second, if I just can play with a machine, just against another player, so maybe we can play perfect chess. Now, the interesting thing is, when we played this match with Veselin Topalov, another top player, in 1998, I can tell you the quality was not very high, because it was limited amount of time, and it was so new for us, how to use the machine. And eventually I realized, and we had many events, the so-called freestyle events on the internet, that proved that it sounds quite ironic, but you don't need a very strong player to get the best result of human plus machine combination. It could sound like a heresy now, but I would say that you don't want a strong player. You need a good operator, a decent player, but someone who will follow the machine, I should guide the machine, but not will you to use the machine to back up his or her own ideas. Because instinctively, if I team up with a computer, I'll try to make my own moves. You don't have to. All you need is just to maximize the effect of machines play, because machines are so strong now. All you have to do is just to guide them. Sometimes you can feel, no, just slight correction, move here, move there. So it's something that requires very different kind of qualities. It's more about interface. So you don't need great knowledge of the game. By the way, it may help, but but on the other side, it may preclude you from sort of using machines' power, because you'll try to play your own game, which could be detrimental.
So it's something that I think you touched on in a few places, that it's become known as Kasparov's law now, right? Something like this, with the process is actually more important. Do you want to explain what that is?
And again, I relied on the results of the freestyle tournaments, and what's happened is that, as predicted, a human plus machine beats supercomputer quite handily. But the most unexpected story was that it's, as I described, a relatively weak human or a group of humans plus machine or machines plus a better process. They of course they beat a supercomputer, but more remarkably, they beat a strong human plus a machine plus inferior process. So that's led me to the conclusion that's all about interface. There's so many ways of empowering machines without creativity. So not our creativity with machines, brute force of calculation. Actually, you do it other way around, and then the result it could be phenomenal.
So it strikes me in the whole book you're very optimistic about technology in general, in terms of like what it might be able to do. What is this a kind of process? Is that a kind of blueprint for in advanced chess of how you see things going forwards in other areas of life with machines and humans working together in a complementary way?
I believe the future is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and I cannot stand all these doom and gloom predictions. It was quite amazing when you just look at at the change of the trend in science fiction from 50s and 60s, where it was all about optimism, us teaming up with computers, robots, cyborgs, flying to other, not just to other planets, but to other star systems. And then it changed to very dystopian vision of the Terminator and the Matrix. By the way, speaking about the Terminator, you know, recently I just got an idea, just having a lecture in Dallas, Texas, early this month. I looked at the Terminator. I said, you know what, guys? I can tell you that's another proof of what you call Kasparov law, because we all watched the first one, human versus machine. But if you follow the number 2 and number 3, that was exactly what I said. Human plus machine plus a better process being a supercomputer.
It's very true.
It's the and I think it's this what we learn from chess is that there are many ways of us sort of getting something new, something positive out of the cooperation. And by the way, these things are going to happen anyway. So what's the point of trying to slow down, which is a natural cycle. We have technology replacing certain elements of human activities. For centuries, technology was there. Machines have been replacing blue-collar jobs. Now, the difference is now machines are threatening people with college degree, political influence, and Twitter accounts. That's why we hear all the stories about it. But that's absolutely normal. I think that's called progress. And if machines taking over certain menial parts of elements or aspects of cognition, that's not the end of the world. There's still many things that humans can do. All we need is just to look for new challenges and for new frontiers.
So we just come back from China for the AlphaGo match against Kejay. And one thing that happens in Go, which is slightly different from chess, is in Go there's a tradition of players thinking about how far off from optimal play are they, in theoretical God play or optimal play. So how far do you think even the top chess computers are from optimal chess? I mean, what do you think the top ELO rating would be possible to play at chess is? Do you have an idea?
No, I don't have an idea, because as we briefly discussed at lunch, is that when you look at the endgame databases, and now we have all 7 pieces. That's, I don't know, 100 terabytes or whatever. So every position is being calculated from to the very end. And in many cases, you just you have a position that says mate in 492 moves. And I bet you that in the first 450 moves, you will not see the difference. So I could see probably 420 moves. Yes, but it's just now I don't know what it tells about the game we play, because the average human game is 50 moves. Now, when you look at average machine games, it's maybe 80, 90 moves. It doesn't mean that the game should be too long. Or what we know that the game of chess is an ultimate endgame with 32 pieces. So that's why I don't see any chance in any future that machine will play e2, e4, and will announce mate in 16,755 moves. It's not going to happen. The number of legal moves in the game of chess, 10 power 45. That's enough to feel safe. But it's not about solving the game, it's about winning the game. And I think there's still, some improvement. The machines could get better and better. Basically, sky is the limit. And today, I still think Magnus with white in his good day will probably secure a draw against the machine. But winning against the computer today, it's virtually impossible. It's the level of precision that is required, the level of vigilance, it's impossible. So we're not used to play with such a tension. So machines will get better. And by the way, we see an improvement all the time. I remember this as well by writing my books, my great predecessors, and then my matches against Karpov, and then my best games. And some of the games, the same games, analyzed 2-3 years later with just new version of the same engine, and just. I could see that, there's some of the moves that I treated as great in say 2009, in 2012, with more powerful computer, I had my doubts.
Yeah, very cool. So look, I've got so many more questions, but I know I should give some time. The time is moving forward, so I don't know. I should let the audience ask any questions. If you put your hand up high so I can see.
Wow. Oh, total silence.
We covered everything. Well, let me ask you another question. Oh, wait a second, there was a question over there. Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you, I was too young when the Deep Blue match happened, so I don't have any personal memories of it.
Too young, yes.
But when I read stories of it, it kind of struck me that the match seemed like everyone was, it had great publicity, but people really wanted to see whether, well, to put it blunt, whether you would lose against the machine. And I found this really, my question is basically, do you feel like this was the case, or do you feel it actually felt like a normal chess match where people would see who would win? Or rather, do you feel like you had support on your side as well?
Oh, yeah, I had plenty of support. I can tell you that most people who wanted me to lose, they were actually in the world of chess. Now, because I was a world champion for 12 years, and that was the first event I ever lost. So that's naturally, a lot of people wanted me to lose one day. And since I was unbeatable in human chess, so they had a hopes in the machine. But the atmosphere there was phenomenal, and it was a reflection of the famous cover of the Newsweek, "The Brain's Last Stand." And I remember when I won game one of the match, it was a big celebration. I can even remember on CNN, they talked, the two presenters, they talked about it and said, look, it's a Russian playing an American machine, but I'm rooting for a Russian.
Any other questions? Sorry.
Hello, Tore Grapel from the AlphaGo team. Humans seem to be more efficient in playing both chess and Go, probably, in that they evaluate much fewer variations and positions than computers do. I mean, by many orders of magnitude, probably. Can you give us an intuition of how this difference can come about? What are humans actually so good at in chess that they can do this so efficiently, and that they only need to examine so few variations as compared to computers?
Now, we can talk about sort of general rules, but also you should remember that there are different playing styles, because the way Karpov or myself will look at the same positions will be very different. Because I will maybe look for an opportunity to break through, just to sharpen the game, to create complications, and Karpov will be looking for sort of long-term strategic advantage that could manifest in the end game. Those are the differences. What brings us together is that, as you just said, we didn't have to analyze millions of lines. We couldn't. So we could look for one or two options. How do we know that those two options are the best? I don't know. I know this, what it is. But again, then we had another subtle difference. I will probably try to go as deep as I can calculating. Karpov will try to look for an option where he doesn't have to calculate at all. So relying on his understanding, because there are many patterns. You can recognize patterns. And then bringing patterns together, you can have a picture, a big picture. That's what humans are unique at. And that's why, for instance, if you team up with a computer, sometimes even without calculating, I wouldn't go there. And then it would be quite interesting to check whether machine's calculation proves it. But in many cases, I think I'll be right. And especially at the time when machine goes very deep and then reaches its horizon, and then you also should look at the position and say, it smells. There's something wrong. I don't know exactly what is wrong, but something is wrong. There are also situations where you have to calculate. When you sacrifice something, you sacrifice material, and it's take it or break it. So you cannot afford to use your common sense because you're material down. So my game was Vessel in Topolov, another one I played in 1999. That's my longest combination. So I cannot tell you that I saw every line there. It will not be true, but the combination, the final position that I saw, it's like kind of lightning, just very quickly what will happen at the end. It included it's a 30 ply lengths, 15 full moves. So that's ironically, that because I saw the final position, as later machine proved that I could win earlier, and Topalov missed a chance to not to escape, but to have the end game that he could probably defend. Otherwise, it's what you describe is just another proof of the Moravec paradox. Yeah. That's the.
I was going to bring that up. You should explain what that is, because you talk about that a lot.
Yeah, exactly. That's machines are very good at what humans are not so good, and other way around. So it's chess. Chess is it's interesting that chess was probably because Go and shogi, they were just played elsewhere. But for the Western science, chess was an ultimate test. For artificial intelligence, and that was another result of 1997 match, that the expectations of the founding fathers of computer science, like Alan Turing, Claude Shannon, Norbert Wiener, that machine beating strong chess player, and of course the world champion, would be it. This is the moment for AI. I have to say they were wrong. So it's this Deep Blue was as intelligent as your alarm clock.
Yeah.
A $10 million one, but
I actually have a theory about the Moravec paradox. Is that an explanation for that? If you have hand-built systems like Deep Blue was, then as the programmers, you have to understand clearly enough what you're trying to codify explicitly, so you can codify it in rules or heuristics like Deep Blue was. And the problem is that for many things that we take for granted as humans, like vision or riding a bike, all these things we do implicitly, we don't explicitly understand well enough how we do those things, so we can't codify it. And but that's why I think that learning systems, the kinds of things like AlphaGo, might end up being more powerful, because they could learn from experience how to do those things like humans do.
No, it's one of the rules that I learned, from my experiences, that anything that we do and we know how we do, machines will do better, because we can communicate it. So it's one way or another to codify it. Yeah. So the big question is now whether machines can ever do
the intuitive, implicit
things that we do without knowing how we do.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's the big question, right? I mean, I think you say in your book, up till now, anybody who attempted learning systems, including your great teacher Botvinnik, fell short against the the hand-coded
50 years
systems.
ago, 40 years ago, because it's in the beginning there was a big debate, and I think that's I mean, Turing. Few people know, by the way, that he wrote the first program in 1952. There was a chess program, and the trick was that there was no computer. Yeah. It's the only game that the Turing program. Hand. Yes, exactly. Just he put it on a piece of paper and calculated the moves. And when I spoke at the centenary, so I asked my friends from Germany, they actually reconstructed it and put it in a computer.
Oh, cool.
You can actually play a Turing machine. Pretty weak, but it's in 1952. Yeah. So, but they believed, and that's interesting. They believed that the way to make machines playing chess, it's not brute force, but understanding. But it failed. This concept failed very quickly because brute force kept coming, and just it was like avalanche. They couldn't stand a chance. So that's why all attempts, including one of my great teacher Mikhail Botvinnik, to come up with this parallel concept of learning, failed. And by the end of the 60s, early 70s, the story was over. Now it seems that we're just like in seasons. We're going back to this notion, and maybe it will prove to be superior.
Well, hopefully AlphaGo will make Botvinnik happy then. It's sort of a learning system, right? So it turns out that Go needed to happen. What do you think the difference is between Go and chess that required Go to have have to have this other approach? They couldn't do it, the handcrafted approach.
Look. It's a tough question because I have nearly absolute knowledge of the game of chess and almost zero knowledge of the game of Go. But from what I know is that the Go doesn't have the same tactical configuration. So you have to. It's all about strategy. It's just it's a long term, and that's why it's far more difficult for machines to learn how to do that. But also, if machines could do it at a certain level, they could be deadly for humans because they suddenly become superior. So I'm not sure. It's just I'm speaking to a great expert. I still think that relatively, if you compare the strengths, I think the chess playing engines are relatively stronger than AlphaGo. It's in absolute ratings. No, but then you look at it, but then the gap between it's just because the mistakes made by human players in Go, they are deadly. They are just they could offer more openings for the machine. So in chess, the human game is always unstable. So it's not as stable as the machine. But I think in Go, the depths of the mistake could be far more significant than in chess.
I guess we'll have to put that to the test by teaching AlphaGo chess to play chess, right? And then we'll see.
That'll be interesting, you know.
Yeah.
So how soon AlphaGo can crash the strongest chess engines? Again, it's what I said. It's not about AlphaGo, but it's about the nature of the game, Go and chess. But So
would you be pretty surprised if a learning system could beat the handcrafted systems ever in chess?
Look, that will be another level of experiment because the current systems it's not primitive brute force anymore now. That's why I said it's today. And by the way, that's the moment I say it, people just look at me in disbelief from non-professional audiences. I said the free chess app on your mobile phone is stronger than Deep Blue. They say, no. It's just, you are sore loser. Yes, I'm sore loser. But it doesn't change, This is the fact is that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
No, very good. So I don't know if there's a last question from the audience. We have time for one or two more. Oh, yes, from the lady at the front.
Wow.
Yes, at the front here.
If you could, would you play Deep Blue again?
Look. There are a couple of problems. One, I'm retired and I don't play professional chess. Two, Deep Blue is dead. Yeah. I wanted to play in 1998, and I wish I had a chance, but that's it. That's old history. It's spilled milk, water on the bridge, you name it. But I played other computers, and as long as I was active chess player, I never ducked a challenge, and that's why this book begins with a story of me playing 32 chess computers in 1985, a simultaneous exhibition. I'm not sure, but anyone still owes the chess machine that's from antique chess machines?
Yeah,
anybody here?
I still have one.
You still have
I think I've got one of one called Kasparov version.
Yeah, this is it. So I played this. It's 32 machines, and there were 4 manufacturers, 8 machines each, and I won all the games. Most amazing thing that nobody was surprised, and I can tell you the progress. It's just from that match in 1985. I played it in June, just a few months before I won the title, beating Karpov. To my match with Deep Blue, just 12 years. It tells you that certain things happening, but I couldn't help but reminding people about this match in 1985 because I say that was a golden age. Yeah, machines were weak, my hair was strong.
Yes, we're entering another very exciting, I think, interesting era. So, look, I think let's all thank Garry for an amazing discussion, and
Thank you.
Thank you, Garry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.